I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world and for all those who have passed away in our community during these past weeks. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wexler?
Here.
Mr. Rogan?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Gahn?
Here.
Mr. McGough?
Here. Dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, Tax Assessors Results Report for the hearing date held July 23, 2014.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3B, Agenda for the Zoning Hearing Board meeting held August 13, 2014.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3C, Tax Assessors Reports for the hearing dates held August 13, August 20, and September 3, 2014.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3D, Audit Status Reports from Robert Rossi and Company, received August 14 and August 28, 2014.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3E, Agenda for the City Planning Commission meeting held on August 27, 2014.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3F, Minutes of the Composite Pension Board meeting held July 23, 2014.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3G, Minutes of the Scranton Firefighters Pension Commission meeting held July 23, 2014.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed. Are there any announcements from members of the council?
Yes, thank you. I have two. First, the Dante Literary Society is presenting A Miner's Tale, the story of the anthracite coal miner in northeastern Pennsylvania through monologue, September 6th at 8 p.m. at the Dante Club at 1916 Prospect Avenue in Southside. The cost is $8. For further information, contact Jack at 342-7110 or 878-6760. Also, the West Scranton Hyde Park Neighborhood Watch is hosting the Coal Cracker Smoke and Stoke Barbecue Competition September 12th and 13th at Montage Mountain Resorts. On Saturday the 12th, it will be held from 4 to 11 p.m. And on the 13th, it will be held from 10 to 8 p.m. VIP passes are available. General admission is $5 for children. General admission is $5, children under 12. It is free, live entertainment, barbecue to purchase, and the Villa Capri Car Show is on Saturday from 12 to 6. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else?
September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Northeast Suicide Prevention Initiative will hold a walk Saturday, September 6th at 9 a.m. from Courthouse Square in downtown Scranton. For more information, you can go on to their website, www.northeastsuicidepreventioninitiative.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of, well, first of all, my apologies for appearance. 10 days ago, I had some surgery to remove a subcutaneous squamous cell carcinoma. I'm learning a lot of medical jargon. Yeah, write that one down. And it was very extensive and required plastic surgery in order to repair. And this is part of the result. I have asked, or I will ask ECTV that they not do any close-ups for fear that we scare women and small children, but just as a point of information. We're going to deviate a little bit from the agenda for this evening, just to make people aware of some of the items that have taken place during the past month, some of the things that we're looking forward to doing in the coming months, and also some items that may be of interest to those people who would come to the podium on some of the issues that are evident or part of the agenda this evening. The first thing that I would like to do is, to read a letter that was sent to council from Solicitor Jason Shrive concerning the EIT legislation that is on tonight's agenda under emergency certificate. This letter was received by council on August 15th as an explanation as to why that legislation was being presented at this point in time and not earlier in the year. It is somewhat lengthy, but I do want to read through the entire letter. Dear Honorable Council members, I write this letter in response to Councilman William Gaughan's press release statement that ran in this morning's Scranton Times-Tribune, wherein Councilman Gaughan requests a special meeting of council with the mayor, the administration, H.A.B. Berkheimer, and others to investigate my failure to submit the 2014 EIT ordinance to council earlier this year. It is my sincere hope that this letter of explanation will answer any and all questions that council might have regarding this matter. In January 2014, soon after being sworn into office as the new city solicitor, one of the many tasks to be completed was that of submitting the various 2014 taxing ordinances to City Council. As you know, public notices were placed in the newspaper advertising the proposed adoption of the taxing ordinances as required by law. And the various taxing ordinances were adopted by City Council on January 30th, 2014. And signed into law by Mayor William Courtwright on January 31st, 2014, with a retroactive effective date of January 1st, 2014. Since that time, the city has gone about the business of the city, including the collection and receipt of tax revenues to support its operations. On Friday, August 8th, 2014, requests were made to the city clerk's office and the city law department for a copy of the city's 2014 EIT ordinance. It was at this time that I discovered that I had not submitted the 2014 EIT ordinance to City Council for adoption with the other taxing ordinances in January 2014. I need to state as plainly as possible, without any excuses being made, that this was an oversight on my part as the new city solicitor. I missed it, and it was and is my error. I drafted all of the other taxing ordinances, reviewed the same, and submitted them to City Council, not realizing that I had forgot one, namely the 2014 EIT ordinance. The 2014 EIT has been and continues to be collected by H.A.B. Berkheimer, the city's earned income tax collector, at the rates previously authorized by the city for residents and non-residents. With that said, it is my legal opinion that the city was not required to reenact the 2014 EIT ordinance, as there was no change in the rate of taxation, and is not required to reenact any taxing ordinance that does not contain a change in the rate of taxation. I base this opinion on my reading of the Local Tax Enabling Act, which states in pertinent parts as follows: every such tax, meaning those taxes authorized by the Local Tax Enabling Act, of which the EIT is included, shall continue in force on a calendar or fiscal year basis, as the case may be, without annual reenactment, unless the rate of the tax is subsequently changed. It is my determination that the city has consistently reenacted the EIT ordinance over the years out of an abundance of caution. The only change from year to year in the EIT ordinances has been the tax year and the collection period itself that is listed in the ordinances. The plan to correct this error is to run the required legal notices in the newspaper and submit the 2014 EIT ordinance to City Council at its regularly scheduled meeting on September 4th, 2014, under an emergency certificate requesting a suspension of the rules and final adoption of the 2014 EIT ordinance at that evening's meeting. The 2014 EIT ordinance will be effective retroactive to January 1st, 2014, and the same is permitted under the Local Tax Enabling Act, since there is no change in the rate of the taxation. It is also worth noting that historically most of the city's taxing ordinances are effective retroactive to January 1st, including all of the other taxing ordinances adopted by City Council earlier this year. Going forward, City Law Department will take steps to ensure that this error never occurs again, including enacting taxing ordinances in 2015 that continue in full force and effect unless and until a change is made in the rate of taxation in accordance with the parameters of the Local Tax Enabling Act. I have also already calendared reminders for the next 3 years in the City Law Department to review all of the various city taxing ordinances for any required legislation in early January of each year. I will also draft a letter now for any future incoming administration to be provided to the same during the transition period, notifying them of the taxing ordinance requirements and the safeguards that I have put in place and recommending that they follow the same. In this week's newspaper articles, the possibility for a legal challenge to the city's recently adopted Act 205 tax has been discussed, with this error raised as a potential avenue of attack. While I do not believe that the argument be a strong one, I do not think it would be in the best interest of the city to hold a special meeting or public caucus discussing this matter publicly with the looming threat of litigation. I have answered the questions posed by the press, I have provided this explanation, and I am more than happy to speak with each member of City Council and/or the City Council solicitor individually regarding this matter, and will make myself available at your convenience. I take full responsibility for this oversight and have apologized to the mayor and now do so to the members of council. If you should have any questions or would like to schedule a meeting, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you for your time and understanding. Very truly yours, Jason A. Shrive, City Solicitor. Attorney Menorah, is there anything that you would add to that subsequent to that letter being sent to us?
I did review the EIT statute, state level, and there is no requirement that it be reenacted every year. It would not have been something that would have come to our attention simply because it need not be reenacted every year. When it didn't come down, there was no need for us to call up and say, why didn't it? The statute already provides for an automatic continuation of the tax from year to year. That's what Attorney Shrive is referring to, and he's correct about that. As to the retroactivity, I think practically every year the taxing ordinances that we pass are retroactive, if not for some period of time. I think it was the end of January this year, so they were retroactive for a month. And in my recollection, has been that way virtually every year because there is no taxing ordinances prior to the upcoming year where the tax would be imposed. So I believe he's correct about that as well.
Thank you. Second thing I would like to, and other members of council may respond to this as we get to the legislation. The second thing that I would like to address is a Scranton Times article that appeared concerning that said the refusal of the city clerk to provide someone with the legislation, the EIT legislation for this agenda. We believe that was, or I believe, and members of council believe that the article was very misleading. There was no refusal on the part of the clerk's office to provide that information. The information that was requested was simply not available. The legislation for the agenda
is not official until it is posted on Wednesday afternoon, 24 hours in advance. And therefore, the clerk, as has been the protocol with all councils, the clerk did not provide the legislation prior to it being approved by council for the agenda and being posted. To provide legislation prior to it being posted, in my opinion, and the opinion of our solicitor and the city solicitor, would be to provide something that is possibly misleading. Because until it's officially posted, it can be changed, it can be removed from the agenda, and to provide somebody with something prior to that period of time might lead to providing either misinformation or misleading information. So there was no intent on the part of the clerk's office or city council to deceive anyone or to hide anything from the person making the request. It was simply following the protocol that we have always followed as far as providing legislation and the publication of legislation. The third item that we're dealing with is SAPA legislation. There had been some confusion as to the status of SAPA and where it stood. We've sort of worked that out, and it is our intent to have the legislation concerning SAPA on the agenda for November 6th. That would be the earliest at which it would appear, and at that time, a vote on the disposition of SAPA will be, can be held. But that will be something that we are looking at for the future, a very near future. As far as the, I'll say, recovery plan or Amoroso plan or items, there, a number of things have taken place during the past month and are ongoing. Obviously, the priorities of the administration and of council are to first deal with the pension problems that exist. I am told that from the administration that negotiations with the labor unions have begun, that both sides are well aware of the need of the stress under which the pension funds are, or how far they are stressed, and that both sides are understanding of the need for revisions in the current pension plan and in future contract negotiations as far as the pensions are concerned. These are negotiations that are currently ongoing, and hopefully some resolution to them, again, prior to November and the time of that we need to prepare for the budget. Also, negotiations continue on the Scranton Parking Authority and the Scranton Parking Authority debt and the disposition of the garages. It is hopeful that resolution to at least dealing with the debt is somewhat imminent. Hopefully we can look toward that in the relatively near future. As far as the Act 205 tax, I know that there was an article that ran in the local newspaper. Certainly the city is that there are going to be challenges to the Act 205 tax, and that the city is preparing to defend those challenges. We fully intend to implement the Act 205 tax and to defend against any of the challenges. The last thing, one of the priorities of the sewer authority is a little bit more difficult to deal with. The administration is still reviewing options as far as the sewer authority is concerned as to what might be done, some of the options that may exist as far as the sewer authority and the monetization of the sewer authority as well. The 2013 audit is woefully behind. This is primarily because of some personnel issues that have existed in the BA's office actually since last year, when the finance manager, left that office. She had been the one that had dealt entirely with the audit, and the person that replaced her then went out on medical leave, and it has been difficult getting the adequate personnel to deal with the budget. Hopefully the administration has done a number of things to try and shore up the BA's staff so that the budget, hopefully, we certainly want the budget completed prior to the end of this year. On a positive note, there is, as far as the 2015 TANs are concerned, there has been interest from local banks, investment groups who are looking at possibility of funding 2015 TANs at rates that are, interest rates that are much more accessible to the city, and also without the punitive restrictions that had existed in some of the other, in our previous TANs. Also, we're looking at the possibility, and I know as people sit there fanning themselves in the heat, we are also looking at publication of a comprehensive snow removal or snow plowing program. Mr. Gaughan has some ideas from some other areas, and we'll be hopefully meeting with members of DPW and the administration so that we can publish, as we said, a comprehensive plan for, snow plowing, snow removal prior to the first snow incident of the year. Another thing that we need to look at for the coming months, the elevator in City Hall is going to need extensive repairs, which would mean that the elevator would not be in operation for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, maybe longer, which presents a problem, because without the elevator, this room becomes non-compliant with ADA. There is no handicap accessible way other than the elevator, as it would be for anything, any of the offices above here. So the administration is looking at ways to deal with that situation as far as moving something like lips down to the first floor or basement. What it means for council is that we are not able to hold council meetings here. We are going to need to move council meetings to an alternative site. We are looking at some possibilities as it becomes more imminent for the repairs of the elevator. We will make announcements as to where meetings will be held. The one thing that does become a problem is that this room is the only one that is available for a live feed from ECTV. So to move the council meetings to another site would mean that a live broadcast of the council meeting would not be possible, that it would have to be done on a tape delay or a delayed basis of some kind. And last thing, I met with the mayor, and the mayor and I have agreed that we will meet on a weekly basis simply to discuss what legislation is going to be brought before council, some initiatives that may exist, simply a discussion so that council can be hopefully better prepared to deal with some of the things that come from some of the legislation, so that we can be a better part of the process and hopefully make for a smoother operation of the city. And I know that was lengthy, but I thought there were some bullet points or talking points that needed to be presented prior to citizens' participation.
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
Joan Hodowanitz?
Joan Hodowanitz, Scranton resident. I want to go back to the issue of Rossi's 2013 audit. And I've been watching the reports that they've been submitting on a monthly basis. And if memory serves, we had 24 outstanding items in July before the recess, and we still have 24 outstanding items. You said it would be woefully late. It's going to be tragically late. I understand that we lost the one person who was the subject matter expert, but maybe the administration could take a lesson from the military. Any very sensitive position that has a key function like supporting the audit needs to document those procedures into standard operating procedures. Everyone's expendable. Okay, this should not happen again. Realize that in 70 days is the deadline for the administration to present its budget to the council. And the audit's already 95 days late. The administration should have that in hand today, and before today. It should have had it on May 31st, because that's what you base part of your budget process on. You must know, what happened in prior years and what you have to change and correct. I would also like to see when the mayor submits his proposed budget that he adds a couple line items in there and gets somebody in there whose function is the audit, who has those qualifications, that expertise. This should not happen again. I also hope that the administration learns from this experience the importance of cross-training its employees. Okay, I take nothing away from the work that they've done up to this point in time, but this is a sucking chest wound that's been self-inflicted by the city on itself, and we need to stop this. I don't want to stand up here next January saying, what's the status of the 2014 audit, which I will be doing, by the way. Which leads me to the more tragic issue of the municipal pensions. I do not have a warm fuzzy. I wonder if you all have a warm fuzzy. When the State Auditor General gave his press conference, did he leave a written copy of his audit findings for the city?
I don't know that, I have not received anything, so I do not know.
Yes, he did.
He
Okay.
did? Is that available to the general public?
Yes, it is.
Is it on the website?
I don't know if it's on the city's website, but I know it was on the Scranton Times website, and I'm sure we could get you a copy.
It's on, okay. I'll talk to Jim later on. I would like to
Or
look
we
at
could
that.
get you a copy if you need one.
I would love to see that, to see exactly what he said. It was an interesting article, obviously, in the paper, but I want to see the details. Mr. Evans, I compliment you for having taken the time and initiative to attend that press conference. Like many people, I was sorely disappointed that the mayor did not have the opportunity to attend. Mr. Evans, do you know if the mayor sent a representative?
Yes, Attorney Shrive was there.
Okay. And were the pension boards represented?
Yes, actually, they were having a meeting in this room right before that announcement, and they all came over for the press conference. Okay.
I just think that, the single most critical issue facing the city today, I can't imagine a higher priority than addressing the pension crisis. Do you know if the city has made any effort to coordinate with the state on state-level pension reform?
I know Mr. Bolzoni has been in contact with numerous people at the state level.
Because the AG is insisting that this is not a problem that the city can solve by itself, it's a statewide problem. So I would love to see some kind of coordination in that regard. The only other thing, I would like to compliment the city workers who supported the Latin and Italian festivals. I think they did an excellent job, as they do every year. That went very smoothly and was very enjoyable. The only other thing, and Mr. Rogan, this whole brouhaha about you and your using your land for the Verizon cell tower, I understand that what you did was perfectly legal, but in the words of, who was it, Jay Leno? What were you thinking?
Bill Jackowitz?
Good evening, Scranton City Council, Kathy, City Council stenographer, Lori, Amo. Welcome back, I guess. Piggybacking on the audit, okay? I agree with Joan just said. Maybe the city should get in contact with the military, because I've been through at least 1,000 audits in my 34 years career. And I tell you what, they know how to do audits. Not having a qualified person, not having an SOP, standard operating procedure, not having a checklist for a city this size that deals with hundreds of millions of dollars at one time, that's ridiculous. That is unacceptable. And the only people responsible for it are, like I've been saying for years, are the 7 elected officials: the mayor, the city council, and the city controller. We've been distressed since 1992, and you mean to tell me that no one thought about standardizing the audit procedures so that the audit would be done by 31 May of every year? Is that what I'm expected to believe? Well, I tell you what, I don't believe that. And I don't accept the excuse of not having anybody qualified. We have Toby Hanna Army Depot right up the street, 25 miles away. They do audits on a regular basis. Someone knows how to do an audit up there, so why doesn't the city send somebody up there to find out how to do it correctly? And then standardize it and keep it there so that we know we have an election every 4 years for mayor and for city council. So we know people are going to change. But yet no one thought of this? I find that very hard to believe. Okay, now, how does a pension fund get to 16.5%? Please, can someone please explain that to us during motions? How did it get there? Who is responsible for getting there? And those people should be subpoenaed if they have to come in here and explain that to the citizens and the residents of the city of Scranton. Because this, again, totally ridiculous. It should never, ever, ever have happened. But it did. We've been distressed since 1992, for God's sakes. When are we going to learn? When are we going to actually start doing things the right way and quit making excuses and blaming other people for the mistakes that our elected officials have made? Nobody else but our elected officials. Okay. I just heard on the news today that there's 18 bogus cell towers in the United States. All 18 of these towers are located within military installations, okay? And what they're doing is they're stealing information from people, okay? So the only thing I'm gonna do is a caution. If you're gonna approve cell towers, make sure that they're legitimate. Because there's 18 right now in the United States and more being built, I'm sorry. So all I'm doing is let's use a little bit of common sense, a little bit of caution before we start approving cell towers, okay? Because they may be bogus, you know? They may not be, but they may be. So we have to make damn sure that they're not, okay? We have enough of problems in this city, in this state, and in this country. Okay. In reference to Mr. Rogan, Pat, you made a big mistake. It may be legal, it may not be against any ethics violations, but you know what? You made a big mistake, okay? And that's all I'm going to say on the matter, okay? But, again, right now in the city of Scranton, there's not too much confidence in our elected officials. Most people do not trust city council, they don't trust the mayor, they don't trust the school board, They don't trust the President of the United States, Congress, the Senate. And when politicians go out and make mistakes like this, all that adds to is more distrust. Okay? So again, it's over, it's done with. I'm sure you're going to hear more about it, but that was a dumb move, Pat.
Bob Wallace?
Good evening, Council. Bob Wallace, Scranton. Been a while since I've been here, and it's kind of disturbing having watched over a period of time what's transpired in this city. You know, I don't see Scranton going forward in the directions we've been going. Brought in a Mr. Amoroso. What could he tell us that Parenti, and it used to be Parenti and Randolph, John Neal in there, they merged with a huge firm today, that they couldn't come in and ask us. They're from Scranton. Why don't we go ask them what we should do with the city of Scranton from a business point of view? Why don't we go to the university and let them logically tell us what needs to be done? They create PhDs, they have a master's program, they have a dean of business. I'm sure they know what we need to do in the city of Scranton. Why are we bringing somebody from out of the area to tell us what we already know? We have a hell of a problem here, and we're not doing a darn thing about adjusting it or doing anything about it. We've continued to squander millions and millions of dollars here. We're intelligent people, hopefully, that we could solve our own problem if we just want to solve it and put politics aside and the good old boy clubs. Scranton could survive. I came here for a number of reasons. One, I'd like to thank Mr. Schreiber for standing up like a gentleman. He took the beating, but it was unfair. Because there's people on this council, people in the administration, that knew what the tax was all about, but nobody came forward. He got blindsided, but he was still man enough to stand up and say, I take responsibility, because he's the attorney. I think the people should be refunded the money from that tax, because we have no business collecting it or taking it. It's not our money. We didn't enact the right legislation to keep the money. It should go back to those that it came from. If we're going to do something, let's do it right. We sit here and we keep talking about we're going to change this and change that. I donated to the commuter tax fight because I don't think the people outside this city should have to pay for our carelessness and our neglect to squandering and mismanagement, and I could go on and on and on, that we've done and asked people to pay our pension funds, our responsibilities. It's not their responsibility, nor is it our responsibility to worry about their towns. But we keep killing this city, and there's going to be nothing left here. It's unfair to those people to have to pay to come to the city to work. It's bad enough as it is. I came here for a couple other issues. One, it was sad to see, and I'm looking at the agenda, and see that we're looking to find money from to fund the swimming pool. You realize $3.5 million plus that I fought and others went to court over to put away perpetually, and only the interest used for parks and recreation was squandered by the council and the administration passed. Think of that, $3.5 million plus the interest went down the toilet. And now we're going to look at it. Where's this money going to come from? What magical wand do we have that's going to bring more money here when we're already trying to beat everybody up to stay the heck out of Scranton? I'm being assessed on a church I bought. Over $500,000 assessment on Holy Cross Church that I paid $35,000 to preserve history and culture in this city. They were going to get rid of it for $2, or $1 rather, and $2 to a judge, magistrate in this area. And because he didn't get it, I got assessed $500,000 with a tax on it already at $45,000. And you want to tell me about political corruption in the city of Scranton? And we're going to fight it and deal with it. But this is what's wrong. Yet a university and other people don't pay a dime practically for what they're doing here. yet I'm paying $45,000 in taxes on a church that was only worth $3. You know, it's sad. What I came here really, though, is I'm asking this council, I'm proposing and have been pioneering putting a casino in the Steamtown Mall. I'm looking to save Scranton, not kill Scranton. We have the opportunity right now, and I'm asking this council to send letters to the legislators, our congressmen, and everybody that's involved in the political funding to this city, whether it's state or federal. To ask the gaming board to create a license for a resort and casino for the Steamtown Mall. I'm not looking for a casino license, so you understand that. I'm part of the spearheading and the funding that's going to put the people in the mall. Keeping in mind that the gaming board could create a license for a felon, they could create a license for the salvation of the city of Scranton. Who's going to compete? Who's going to argue about us? Mohegan Sun's going to come up here with war paint? Well, guess what? We'll circle the wagons and show them just how strong we are in the Scranton area and how we could survive. And that's what's killing us. I'm not throwing Boscov out. We're going to make many Boscov stores in there. But I'm looking at saving Scranton, and I'm asking you people today, if you have any intentions of saving the city, I'm here to help you give it the hope and salvation that it needs. Other than that, you're going to have a dinosaur on your hands here. You're selling the parking garages. You're trying to sell the authorities. No, Mr. McGough, I need a couple minutes here, because what's going on has been wrong. You're trying to sell businesses that have been making money. What do you think the people that buy them are going to do? Raise money. They got to pay for their business. They're going to hammer us. You cannot sell our assets. Learn how to preserve them and manage them. And that's what's been wrong here. Thank you.
Maddie Garzone?
Good evening, City Council. I'm not really sure this is the correct venue, but as a 30-plus year resident of the city of Scranton, I don't know where to turn.
Would you just state your name for the...
Well, my name is Matty Garzone. I live in North Scranton.
Thank you.
For over 20 years, the property next to mine has been condemned. I have written letters to the City Council. I've written letters to the community development. I have pretty much become a thorn in Brian McAndrews' side for the last 7 months about the property next to mine. I have copies of letters, like I said, from City Council dating back to 1994. We will look into it, every single one of them. I'm sick of it. The housing inspector says, well, there's nothing we can do. We can cite them for not cutting the grass. I work and I live in the city of Scranton, and I work up at Tobyhanna. I earn a fair wage and I pay my taxes. No problem there. You know, I mean, there's things that I think that the city could do better, but who doesn't? But as a taxpayer, what is the city doing for me? I get letters saying, oh, it should be raised, the property should be raised. Several different people, and I made copies of the letters that you guys can have. And all I get is, we'll look into it. Well, I'd like to know when you're going to look into it. In my lifetime? That's all I have to ask. You know, I would like some sort of response from City Council, an accurate and honest response, whether they will look into it and actually follow through on that or not.
If you would leave your name and address with Mrs. Carrera, and a phone number.
Certainly.
I will contact you. I will meet with you at the property.
Okay. And I will leave these with her.
Thank you. Thank you. Lee Morgan?
Good evening, Council. Good evening. President McGough, could I give a copy of this to you, sir?
Please.
Good evening, Council. Lee Morgan. We all have differing opinions on where the city is. So today I'm going to take a new approach to interacting with council, because I know I'm on this side of the podium. I know where I am. I just have my own ideas. My name's not Mr. Amoroso. I've come to these council meetings for decades. This man's plan is going to kill our city. There's not a doubt in my mind about that, not even the singlest doubt. What I have here is I'm petitioning the city government to cut Scranton's 2015 budget by 30%, by however you have to do it. Because to be honest with you, sale of the sewer authority is not the answer. Remember American Anglian, okay? Look at the pension problems we have. Well, when you look at the pension problems we have and they ask who's responsible for that, council's responsible for that. They have an oversight in the budget. They can veto the mayor's budget. Council never did it. We have a dysfunctional government, and I respect everybody sitting there, and I always have. I just disagree. I think, you know, Mr. Wessler, I asked you a question on your first day in that seat about the amount of debt per property in the city and the amount of debt on every resident. That was a very, very, very important question, because that's going to tell you whether this city should immediately file for receivership or bankruptcy. And no disrespect to you, Mr. Wessler, but the budget isn't something that you can handle by yourself. You aren't prepared to do that. I don't think any council member on that council is prepared to handle that budget by themselves. And anybody who believes that is delusional. This city needs a quick turnaround. The most important legislation that's going to come in front of this city is coming November 6th, as Mr. McGough said. SAP is going to be the thing that's going to turn this city around if you know how to implement it. You know, we can blame out-of-town landlords for the decline of the city. No, they were just scapegoats. You go to any successful city, they never complain about investors coming in and buying rental properties. I think you should talk to Mr. Evans here about the amount of properties for sale in this city and who is really willing to come here. And then look at how you're trying to solve our problems with a commuter tax. The most egregious mistake this council could make. These people didn't create this problem. They're coming here to work and support their families. This council needs to wake up and do its job. And it's going to be a hard job, but you asked for the job, and you've got it. I have no axe to grind with the mayor. The mayor talked about a plan. I put my plan in the newspaper. I know my plan will work because I spent over 2 decades here watching everything that happened. And I got here late because there were people here for 20 years before I got here. This city hasn't declined just, you know, over a short period of time. And I disagree with all due respect to the Scranton Times. Their ideas about blight are absolutely incorrect. This city has been strangled since the 20s and 30s by political indecision and mistakes and politics. And it's just kept going and going and going. And now we've come to a city allegedly with 76,000 people that can't pay this city's debt. And as far as the pension, during the last mayoral campaign and for council races long before that, I said that the pension debt was the gorilla in the closet. We need to name a receiver in this city if this council can't get the job done, and we need to file bankruptcy, and we need to try to protect the people in the city. And the most remarkable thing that you can do before you look at the budget and try to figure out what's going on, figure what the average person in the city earns, and then figure how much tax they're paying. And you know, when you go and you have to factor things, how do these people have enough income to pay rent? Okay? The sewer bills are outrageous. How do they pay that? Your water, your utilities? How do you have a life? Mismanagement of the city by the city government has made this a place with a lack of upward mobility wage-wise. It needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Doug Miller?
Good evening, everyone. Doug Miller, Scranton. Just to begin on a personal side note, Mr. McGough, you alluded to some of the medical issues. I just want to wish you a speedy recovery for a brief moment. Moving forward, I have quite a few issues tonight. Obviously, after a long break, vacation, you know, we certainly have gone through an awful lot over the last 30 days or so. You know, unfortunately, during this time, I personally believe the city's outlook has only worsened with some of the events that have transpired over the last month. Specifically, you know, an issue in regards to public trust and public confidence in an elected official, in regards to the actions by Mr. Rogan. You know, although Mr. Rogan has ended his pursuit to place a Verizon cell tower on his property, located on 905-907 West Locust Street, I do believe there are still many serious questions related to this matter that still need to be addressed. These questions are still relevant, and I think we all need to know what took place. Who generated the list of properties eligible for cell phone towers? Was this a decision made by the zoning board? When did council become aware of Mr. Rogan's pursuit of a cell phone tower? And at any time did he ever share his intentions with you? Also, when did Mr. Rogan plan on informing the public of this adventure? And with all this in mind, having these questions out there on the table and hoping to get answers, I think moving forward we need to find a permanent solution to address this issue so that it doesn't happen again. Because the thing that troubles me is I just don't understand how this adventure could have moved forward and moved along and probably would have happened had it not been brought forward by the media and a lot of other people that gave it the attention that it got. And I think that's what's most frightening is how this council was sort of left in the dark on this issue. I know 2 council members acknowledged that they weren't aware of it until it was allegedly tabled on the zoning board's agenda. And so those are things that certainly trouble me. And yet again, it's just another sign of the mistrust in government. And, you know, the politics in this city is just so disgusting, as I've said, that it's destroyed everything it's touched. And, you know, when we step forward here and we wonder why we're in the shape we're in, it's just because we keep electing people that just have no respect for people and no respect for law. And I do think people need to be held accountable here, and that this should not be swept under the rug like many other things have been swept under the rug for decades. And we wonder why the city's in the situation it's in. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. It really is. It's discouraging, and it's just another example of why we can't seem to get anywhere and we can't seem to move forward because of the politics in this community. You know, some of the other issues earlier tonight were the wage tax. I, too, believe that the individuals who have had the wage tax collected for the last 7 months should have it reimbursed to them, because I think for the last 7 months, this city has been illegally collecting the wage tax. You know, with all due respect to Mr. Shrive and his letter, citing his opinion, a judge will determine what's legal or not. And I do believe a legal challenge should be made to this. I think by retroactively going back and instating this legislation that should have been legislated in January. I mean, we had a mayor who served on council for 6 years. He should have known the procedure. We have 2 council members that have served on this council in the past. You should have been aware of it. And I do appreciate Mr. Shrive coming forward and admitting the mistake. But my point is we've had people that hold office currently that have been part of this process for decades. And to sort of have it get by, I think, is a little troubling. It's a little frightening as well. But by doing this, I think that it would be, using the Latin term, legal term, nunc pro tunc, meaning now for then. And I do think that this should be looked at, and I do plan on pursuing the issue with some other individuals in regards to the legality of this matter. You know, we just continue to go down the wrong track. I mean, we had Mr. DePasquale here, the Auditor General, to discuss the pension that we've known for decades was the gorilla in the closet. But what I find most troubling is that we have a mayor who felt it was more important to speak to students at a school than to come to a meeting dealing with the pension crisis. This is his city. He's the chief executive officer. And I think we're having an issue with priorities. I do respect Mr. Evans for attending that meeting, but the mayor should have been there. The commuter tax, you know, you made sure that that was rammed through before you broke for August, and I spoke at the meeting in Oliphant 3 weeks ago, and I support their challenge, and I hope they're successful with that challenge, because the fact that we're so incompetent that we mismanaged the pension fund to now pass it on to somebody who had absolutely nothing to do with it, I just think is totally inappropriate. And I think that we really need to get our priorities in order here. Selling assets, the parking garages allegedly for $20 million. We owe $50 million. We'll still have a $30 million deficit. Is that common sense? I don't think so. Selling the sewer authority to a private entity that is only going to raise the rates as they'll skyrocket is not the answer. Going the Amoroso way is not the solution that I've said. It's not a real plan for recovery. It's a suicide mission. And I can only hope that moving forward, we'll actually take the bull by the horn and we'll be able to solve our own problems without having to go to people outside.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you very much.
Ron Elman?
Hello, Council. I'm not going to fight with nobody tonight. That's good news, huh? I did, before I get started, I want to repeat myself about, I'm not smart enough to think of some of the things that I bring up here. I talked to 12, 15 people during the vacation, and everybody was complaining about something or rather, you know, to me. The one thing that came up was Mr. McGough putting Mr. Evans in his seat before the vacation. And a dozen people or so felt it could have waited. And believe it or not, no one ever mentioned your problem. I don't know if that's good or bad. It did never come up, and you know, I don't know if they did think it was important enough. But I read the article this week in the paper about the licensing bureau inspections. To me, it was just a whitewash. I don't know. They don't seem to have no power to enforce their own codes. I don't understand this. I don't have no examples. Let's just take a dog license or cars on the sidewalk. There's codes, there's good codes in the book, they're not enforced. I was at the grocery store on Kaiser Avenue the other day, and I couldn't get my card out because it was wall-to-wall cars. It says no parking fire zone or something, you know. I had to go up around a car to get out. Somebody ought to drive around and give them tickets, for crying out loud. The people that deserve tickets ought to get them. I very seldom park in the handicap place because people hit my car doors and all. But I see young people get out of cars and go in, they just park there. You know, no respect for anybody. What in the paper today was that little article about, well, it was yesterday, I think, the Luzerne County College wanting to come here yesterday. And our absentee mayor instead of showing some authority, and he welcomes another nonprofit that won't contribute nothing to the city. What we need is people to come in here and pay taxes. You know, like Mr. Hermoso's idiotic nonsense that he's shoving down everybody's throat. He doesn't tackle one single problem that we have. You guys think he's a hero, he's the Messiah. To me, he's destroying the city like everyone else that comes in here. All these developers, they have little token building permits and get away with it. Look right across the street at Mr. Joyce's building. He bragged he spent $32 million or something. His building permits are little minor things. I understand you don't buy one for $32,000. I know how it works. But they get away with murder. And there's his name's in the paper for owing for 7 pieces of property. He hadn't paid taxes. But he doesn't mind grants, loans. He wants forgiveness on everything. Like I said, nobody's tackling the problems that are goodwill. 20 years it's been going on with them. Nobody does a thing about goodwill. They're just all this tens of millions of dollars, and the only thing that comes up, raise taxes. You people are just out of a tune with what's going on in the city. 2/3 of the city, they're giving up something to keep their homes. Maybe not 2/3, it's more than 1/3, I guarantee you. You can see that with all the houses in the paper. 3,000-4,000 people have had houses foreclosed on. I was talking to a fellow the other day. They got 15 houses, he said, to tear down in town. You sneaked up on me. Well, I thank you for letting me speak, get it off my chest.
Thank you, Mr. Ellman. Anyone else who wishes to address council?
Andy Sprague, citizen of Scranton, fellow Scrantonians. We're talking about the pension fund, being that seems to be earth-shattering news at this point. But the truth is, I believe there's around $60-some million in our pension fund. And we're draining it down at about $5 or $6 million a year. You got enough money at the current way with the current people that are getting the pension to go about 10 years. We all know at one point, further out, it becomes insolvent. But we're not bankrupt on the pension fund. We have money to cover the people that are on pension for a good 10 years. Now, the problem with the pension fund is the length of time you have to be working before you get it. A guy working for Social Security has to work until he's 67. A guy working for the city 20-some years. Does that make sense? You seen the police captain that was in Scranton go down in Wilkes-Barre and get another job on the police force. So he gets his Scranton pension and he's working toward the Wilkes-Barre pension. This is what was wrong with the pension. You people ain't old enough to remember when they were getting $1 an hour, $1.10 an hour. That's when a lot of these things were done. But they're not getting $1.10 an hour anymore. They're getting more in wage than the average citizen. I believe the average citizen in Scranton makes $23,000 a year. Look what the average policeman makes or the average fireman make. Now, they're entitled to a pension. I believe that. Sincerely believe that. And your job is to make sure that the new hires will get a pension. The people that are already getting the pension, chances are, in 10 years or so, if the fund wasn't changed, they would be in trouble. But as far as it goes now, you got 10 years to solve this problem. Even though they say it's insolvent, this and that, whatever. It's only insolvent when you can't pay the pension. Then it becomes really insolvent. As long as you can do that, we got some solvency and we got some working time. And you got to work in that time. Of course, you can't do much for 3 years. When you took office, the contract was signed for 3 years. So it's going to be there for 3 years, and I don't think you're going to see much of a change. And the change for the new hires isn't going to make it. It has to go way back. The people that are going to get their pension, not the people who had their pension. I don't think you can change that unless you declare bankruptcy. And I don't think you're willing to do that, even though they keep saying we'll be bankrupt in 4 years, 2.5 years, the pension fund will be. The city already is. We are bankrupt as far as anything. When you're going to sell a $50 million debt for $20 million and then pay $30 million for the next 10 years, that's idiotic. But the city is very idiotic. That's what our problem is. I told you a long time ago, never vote your party or your name. Know the individual and make your decision on that. And you wouldn't be in the mess we're in today. All they did was go there and pull it. Well, Mr. Rogan can tell you that. As a Republican, he couldn't get elected. So he changed to a Democrat. And he's sitting up there now. Because people vote their party, not their brain. And that's where we are today, in debt, in debt, in debt. And it just keeps piling it up. And the newspaper calling us a Legion of Doom. Well, the doom is here. 10 years ago, it wasn't here. 10 years ago, you could have done something to avoid what's happening today. But now you're stuck with it. And in the end, I don't know what you're going to do. And I don't blame Mayor Courtright, because his hands are tied. There's not a darn thing he can do. Maybe when he takes control of the sewer authority, he can get a few bucks with that. But if you new guys remember, we went through this already with the sewer authority. American Allegan used to run it, and we decided to borrow 20 or some or 30 million to pay them out. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it wasn't that high. But we had to borrow money to pay them off to take control of the sewer authority. What do we get from that? We got a $35 connection fee for every sewer line in the city every 2 months. And that's what we got from it. Do we got better sewer service? To me, it doesn't matter. You open your faucet, it goes down the drain. What the state may say, I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sprague.
Good evening, Council. Marie Schumacher. First, I would like to start by saying I think that the condition of our pension funds calls for you folks to vote in requesting a receiver. I believe that we're just not going to get out of this mess. And I would ask Mr. Wexler if next week he would tell us, unless maybe he knows tonight during motions, assuming that the 205, the Act 205 commuter tax goes through, how many years will that add to the pension fund before it dries up? I would also like, since I'm speaking to you now, next time you give the wage tax, which the third quarter should be coming in shortly, if in addition to comparing it to what was collected last year, you would also compare it to the cash flow analysis on whether or not we're ahead or behind of where we expect it to be when the...
Mr. Schumacher, actually this is my last week as finance chair. I will be switching over to public safety. Mr. Evans will become finance chair because he has more time to give to the position than I do since he's retired. So, although I'd be happy to answer all those questions, Mr.
Okay,
Evans
well then,
now.
I'll just switch, assuming he was listening.
Not that I'm not going to care about those issues anymore, but I will not be directly responsible for them anymore.
Okay, I thank you for that. Then I'll give you one for yours. I don't know that I was
That
going to
didn't take
get
long.
down to it, for your new assignment. On the SAFER grants, I have not heard anything about us receiving a SAFER grant, so I'm assuming the time has expired for the award of those grants. If you could let us know next week, I think that's the proper assumption, but I'm not positive. And I would also like to publicly thank Mayor Doherty for rejecting that portion of the last SAFER grant based on the addition of people, based on how many people were going to be retiring, because we sure haven't seen those retirements, and we'd be in really deep doo-doo now if those people had been added and we had to support them. Next, the packages I gave you all before the recess, did anybody have an opportunity to go through those and reach any conclusions, or see the implication of the ratio of the actual sale price or market price within Scranton compared to the surrounding areas, and what that's doing to the residents of the city of Scranton? No? I think that's something that very much needs to be addressed. That's one thing I do agree with Mr. Amoroso on. A reassessment is not only desirable, but essential. And I also believe that you should be talking with our elected officials in Harrisburg to change to a pure market base where it changes every year based on the actual sales of properties, as is done in Northern Virginia and other communities. It keeps it current and it's fair because it's actual. And now, Mr. Rogan, I guess may as well do it now. No, I'll do my what I want to do on the things tonight. I don't understand why on 5B, if it's not necessary, you are bothering to vote on this tonight. It's either necessary and it should be voted on tonight, or it's not necessary and it shouldn't be voted on. I think the fact that you use past practices for a number of reasons. Tonight, for instance, you said the failure to provide the ordinance was based on past practices. I don't know why, when the public announcement is made that it's going to be on the agenda, that should not be the point in time when if you know what's going to be on the agenda, that should be available. But even at worst, if you have an ordinance that's supposed to be 3 readings, when you're planning to ramrod something through in one evening and people get 24 hours, that is not proper, it's not fair, and I think that is terrible. And even tonight's, as I know was called to your attention, the certificate of emergency is not even dated, so it could have been pulled from any legislation. So I will be back next week. Mr. Rogan, I'll address you and a few other items. Thank you.
Good evening. Dave Dobson, resident. Now, on this 205 wage tax, I stated once before that I support it. For the specific reason is this. We are constantly bombarded by tax exempts, and they're not just church in the valley by the Wildwood or the little schoolhouse on the prairie. Constantly. Now, one thing that was mentioned was the school wants to move up here, another tax exempt. The county just acquired 4 properties to build a parking lot for the Lackawanna County Prison. Another tax exempt. It just keeps going on and on. So what's the answer? Are we getting anything from the state other than a bamboozle? No. The state constitution is defective. It's defective because it's saddling us with 33% and growing property tax that is exempt. And we can no longer afford, and I can no longer approve of such a situation where I have to pay taxes for the entire county or Northeast Pennsylvania, and even more so if foreign exchange students are going to these schools. Aren't we all nice Americans? It's wrong. I'd love to see someday to take to federal court the Constitution of Pennsylvania and force the state into replacing these property taxes that are not being paid because they're given an exemption by the state. Wayne, I'd like to comment on your comment and compliment you on it. The state's always here to tell us how bad we are in a hole, but they offer no help, and that this relates right to the very 205 wage tax and whatever other plans are being made. It's ridiculous. We lost $26 million out of the pension plan, I understand, with the boondoggle in 2007 and 2008, and nobody went to jail. Some of these discredited investors are headed right back to other banks and are poised to cause more problems in the future. Right now, our Chamber of Commerce, they're creating a business property bubble. That's why the mall is empty. That's why I can't get, my wife was to go to Montage concerts. I never get there on time. I miss half the damn show. And it really pees me off because I'm paying for it to get there. But there's a big line on the way up the hill. You got a bunch of people screaming at you to drive recklessly to get parked. Then you walk up there and they're searching you, frisking you everywhere. They didn't frisk me properly. I could have had a half a dozen firearms under my coat. And I don't know if my size intimidated the guy or he thought I was going to smack him or what, but they didn't really search me anyway. Sewer utilities and utilities. The worst part of the Amoroso plan is any type of sale of the sewage treatment plant. I would rather pay, my question is, are the taxes, would paying double taxes to the city even be a steal compared to what some service company is going to raise the rates to? I pointed out previously that they have practically double or triple, practically triple in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, of what a reasonable rate for water. And I chase my wife around. She has this giant washing machine, and I open it up and I see 3 pairs of jeans, and I'm paying about $32 a month. So, you know, it's like a giant washing machine, 3 pairs of jeans. Can't talk to her. I'd like to cherry pick the Amoroso plan, because if it all gets passed at a last minute 12th hour, it's just going to be it's just a way of slipping it in under the rug and all of the negative situations with it. And on these Harrisburg tax schemes, I'd like to point out that, just quickly, if you earn minimum wage and they have the LST tax, local service tax, at $156, and someone else earns a little over $90,000 a year, you're paying 1% more. If all of this came to light where we paid the commuter tax from Scranton and all of this other stuff, between state and local taxes, income taxes, it'll be somewhere around 9% or higher on a $15,000 a year wage. Give me a break. And then on top of it, if you make $90,000 a year, the LST tax will be about
Thank you, Mr. Dobson.
0.1666% of, it's like 166 thousandths of a percent of their wages as compared to 1% for a poor jerk that can't even afford the gas to get to work. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to address council?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Mr. Wexler?
Thank you, Mr. McGough. I'd like to just touch on a couple issues that came up while we weren't having meetings. I'd hate to say that we were on vacation because we were very busy in that month. In regards to the EIT tax, I was one of the people that had wished that we had had a public caucus on this issue. I would have preferred that Mr. Shrive and Mr. Mayor Courtwright had come out and gave us the details that were in the letter. The details in the letter are what happened, and at this time that is the understanding that we have on the issue, and that's where it's going to be. I do like the ideas that Solicitor Shrive are putting in place to prevent this from happening again. I would like him to, when they are complete, for us to get a look at them, just so we have some comfort heading into the end of the year that this will not happen again, or if we get the final determination that we don't have to vote on it again. In regards to the issue with my colleague, Mr. Rogan, our solicitor is still pursuing a determination from the Ethics Commission, not so much on what it affects Mr. Rogan, but how this all affected City Council. I was one of the people that did not know about this. I was taken by surprise, and I just want to make sure that the public has confidence in us that we are doing the right thing up here, and I want to regain the public trust on this issue. So Solicitor Menor is pursuing that request that we made. Also, during our recess, since we are prohibited from meeting as more than 3 people, we kind of have to do a lot of things individually. So as part of the process, each of us had prepared issues that we wanted to present to Mayor Courtwright so we can establish an agenda for the fall. I think part of the problem, I'm new at this, the mayor's new at it, Solicitor Shrive is new at it. We wanted to get more of an idea on what was happening, how it was supposed to happen, and not finding out about it maybe the week before. So we all made a list. President McGough had a meeting with the mayor, sat down and discussed some of the issues as he reported today, which was mostly as a result of that meeting. I am very happy to hear that there will be a weekly meeting between the mayor and the council president, and I'm sure as opportunity comes up, some of us may be able to attend. We just want to get a better feel for what's happening and be more involved in the process and moving the agenda along. I'd also like to mention that I'd like to thank Pat Hinton and Dennis Gallagher and their staffs for correcting a problem that rose up as an emergency situation on East Mountain. They did a great job. There was a blight problem there. It's still going to continue in some form, but the major problem of the garbage on East Mountain Road was removed. As mentioned earlier, I didn't want to scare everybody when I said it was going to be my last meeting as finance chair. It wasn't going to be my last meeting as a council person, but one of the reasons why we decided to make the switch is Mr. Evans is retired. He has time during the day to attend meetings. As an example, the meeting that was here with the Auditor General, I work in Mountaintop, so it's impossible for me to attend any meetings here at City Hall during the day. On the previous day, there was a conference call that I was able to participate in, but I feel that the city will be much better served because of Mr. Evans' time and some of his expertise serving as finance chair. And for myself, a lot of the meetings in terms of the public safety occur in the evening. I'm back in Scranton around 5 p.m., so that'll allow me to participate a little bit better, I think, in that on that committee, and that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogan?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank some of the speakers tonight for raising this issue and giving me an opportunity to address it before moving on to city business. I learned of the Verizon's potential investment in the city the way everyone else did at a public meeting. It was at a meeting of council when we all learned that Verizon was looking to secure locations within the city of Scranton. The representative stated, and the minutes also reflect, that they were looking for additional locations for their expansion project within the city parks and outside of the city parks. I didn't receive any information at any time that was confidential regarding that project. I sought the same information that was received by other private investors who have learned the same thing that we all did at that meeting. I purchased land at a public auction in my own name and applied for approval to be part of the project from the zoning hearing board because I have nothing to hide. Everything that I pursued has been legal and in accordance with the State Ethics Commission. It's not just my opinion, but it's the opinion of a well-respected private attorney as well. Although everything I pursued has been legal in accordance with the State Ethics Act, I had notified Verizon that I am no longer interested in renting my land to them because I believe this has become a distraction to many of the important issues facing the city. For not anticipating that possibility when I began to look into this investment and for the distraction that it has caused, I have apologized to each one of my council colleagues individually and to the public as well. I look forward to moving forward, and again, my apologies to the residents and to my colleagues for this becoming a distraction to the many important issues that we are facing. Now on to some of those many important issues. The first item I'd like to speak about tonight is the pension report. We all know that the pension has been a problem in the city for quite some time. The report that came out really put that into focus, how big of an issue it is for the city, that the pension fund may run out of money within as little as 3 to 5 years, and that's with the market staying flat. If we experience a market pullback like we did from 2007 to 2008-ish, the pension fund could be decimated because of the markets, and that's something that's completely out of control of anyone in this room. This is this is the most serious issue facing the city of Scranton right now. I know there are a lot of misconceptions regarding the pension out there because when people think of a pension, they think, well, it only affects the city employees and the retirees. But that's not the case. If the pension fund runs dry, the city is obligated by law to make those pension payments prior to making any other payments in the general operating fund. That would include basic city services such as paying our current police officers, our current fire officers, providing for street cleaning, garbage pickup, any item that's done throughout the city. If the pension fund runs dry, that has to be paid prior to any of the general obligation funds items that we normally look at. This just puts into focus the importance of dealing with the few strategies that we have for the pension. I know one which has passed City Council already and it's pending court approval is the Act 205 tax. I think we have to wait to see how the courts rule on that one. I know Mr. Evans has brought up quite a few times the idea of other pension reforms, and I know Councilman McGough notified us that negotiations will be taking place. That certainly needs to happen as well. In addition to that, the idea of superfunding the pension is something I fully support. By putting in a large dollar amount up front and allowing it to grow over time, that may save us much more money down the line than just going with our MMO. And when we talk about the MMO, it's exactly that. It's the minimum. It doesn't mean it's the correct amount to be putting in. It's the minimum amount, just enough to get by. And again, one market correction and a few other factors, and the pension fund could run dry. And at that point, the city may have to declare bankruptcy. That's how serious of an issue the pension is. Moving on, regarding the 205 tax, and I did bring this up in our caucus, I do believe that if the 205 tax is implemented on commuters, that City Council's rules should be amended of some sort to allow public participation from those who are paying that tax. Just an idea that we tossed around in the caucus. I'm sure once we get a finalization on that tax, we can look into how we would want to amend those rules if that's agreeable to the rest of the board. Next, I did see in our mail here that we have a bill from the Griffin Pond Animal Shelter in the amount of $37,500, and it is a third notice to the city. This is something that I am concerned about because I know that there are a lot of problems with feral cats in our community and other stray animals. But on the flip side of that, some good news, and it's been reported in the newspaper, and I know the group has spoke at our council meetings as well. The group Street Cats has taken over the old zoo at Naog and is looking to rehab that and do a trap, neuter, and release program, which is where they trap feral cats, they bring them in, they spay or neuter them, and release them. Now, it doesn't quite solve the problem of, some feral cats in the community that some people would like, but what it does do is it stops the growth, and it's safer and it's humane. I know a lot of people from the group have approached me. I do think it is a good idea that the city needs to explore, and also at the same time, it may reduce by going through, maybe directing some funds to the Street Cats group, it may help reduce the cost that we're incurring at Griffin Pond. Next, an item that was brought up from some speakers, and it's been brought up sporadically at meetings, and it's been all over social media for quite a while, is the idea of a casino resort in downtown Scranton. That's definitely, and I know I've made some comments about it before, it's definitely an idea I would support if it would be feasible that the state would release a special license for the city. Now, I don't think council should advocate for one specific person to obtain a license, but the idea of the state exploring opening up a special license specifically to help Scranton, I think would be a good idea that should be looked into. Next, City Council did send a letter to Mr. George Roberts, the district engineer from PennDOT, following our public meeting we had 2 weeks ago regarding the problems at Kaiser Avenue, requesting that they reconsider the new ban on large trucks turning right from northbound Kaiser Avenue onto Dalton Street. The letter goes on to say that although PennDOT's, the reasoning for it was for safety, the end result will actually result in trucks traveling through more of a residential neighborhood and through where the Falcons play and where Westside Baseball plays as well. And I did follow up with James May from PennDOT. It is something they are looking at, and hopefully this is an item that will be resolved. And just following up on that meeting that we had, and I know in the past and the future I probably still will be against the recess in August, but I think the meeting, if we were able to schedule more meetings in the month of August or throughout the year like we had regarding that one specific issue, I thought that was a very productive meeting. A lot was accomplished and it was very specific. We were just focused on that one issue. And I think by doing that, it may enable council to be able to work with other agencies a little bit more to get many items completed. 2 more items. Next, the SAFER grant was brought up again. I do believe from speaking to members of the fire department that the federal government has not opened up the application period for next year's SAFER. I think that happens around November. I could work with Mr. Evans and we could check, or I'm sorry, with Mr. Wexler, and check into that. And also, as far as attrition goes, the city cannot afford any further attrition on the fire department. We saw what happened last time when firehouses were closing, particularly on East Mountain, the problems that were caused from it. So that's something that we need to keep at a minimum, the firehouses that we have open currently. Preferably, I'd like to see all of them open and have no brownouts, but at a bare minimum, we have to keep the staffing levels where they currently are. And finally, regarding the emergency certificate in item 5B, I did speak with Attorney Shrive at length about this issue. Probably a good half-hour conversation, and I spoke to Attorney Minora briefly about it as well. I will be voting yes on this legislation to authorize the EIT under the emergency certificate, and I will comment more on it under when the time for that vote comes up. And that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Evans? Okay. First, I'd like to clarify some comments Mr. Wexler made. Sadly, I'm not retired. I did retire from my previous job as an engineer, but I hate to explain those 60, 70 hours I'm working right now to my family where I am. That's retirement work. But I'd like to make a couple comments on some of the discussion tonight. As you know, I attended the press conference given by the Pennsylvania Auditor General, and these are some of my takeaways. The state of Pennsylvania continues to do nothing in terms of real pension reform that could help cities like Scranton. I would suggest that our state reps and our state senator would serve us well by working on these issues on our behalf. Scranton's pension plan is in a category called severe distress, only because there wasn't a category available called on life support. Inaction on pension reform will lead the city into receivership or bankruptcy. And finally, while there was a case to be made that a switch to a 401k plan or type plan or a defined contribution plan, at least for new hires, might generate higher short-term costs, and that came up during the Auditor General's conversation with us at the press conference, the long-term savings because of this change would be tremendous. Constantly taking a short-term approach to our financial picture is what has gotten us to this point that we are in today. Secondly, I'd like to talk a little bit about reassessment. The city of Scranton and our property owners are getting crushed because of lack of a reassessment in Lackawanna County. Again, while the county abandoned the initiative, there needs to be a statewide solution, a plan that will mandate countywide reassessments. However, it cannot be another unfunded mandate. There must be cost sharing involved between the state and the county. There are other things that the state could do, thinking outside of the box, that could be looked into. Marie touched on this a little bit. For example, allowing rolling reassessments tied to property value increases that would not cost nearly the amount that a standard reassessment would, and could be done annually to save even more. Again, this is something our state reps and our state senator could look into on our behalf. Finally, I want to touch on cell towers. Myself and Councilman Gahn and Councilman Wexler were at the zoning meeting last month. I served on the City Planning Commission when the current zoning code was drafted in 1994. The technology and the need for increased placement of cell towers was not even an issue back then. However, 20 years later, we are still using the same code to regulate cell towers in our city. I would suggest, with the concurrence of council, that we ask Don King as a city planner and the City Planning Commission to review this matter and come up with a comprehensive zoning amendment change relative to cell tower placement in our city for our review. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Gahn?
Thank you. And I would agree with the asking Mr. King. I think you're totally right on that. We need to make sure that cell phone towers are not put in the middle of residential neighborhoods. It's a major problem. I was contacted by a gentleman today about speeding on Sloan Street in West Scranton, and I did tell that gentleman that I would get together or send correspondence to Chief Graziano to see what we could do about that, maybe an increased patrol on Sloan Street, so I will be taking care of that. During the break, numerous residents contacted me with various concerns. There were issues with properties on Quincy Avenue in the Hill section. Our office contacted licensing and inspections, and they are looking into those issues. There was also concern about a wall that is falling over on McKenna Court in the Hill section. An inspector is being sent out to this location, and we will be updated as to the progress on that. A resident also expressed concerns about 1103 Blair Avenue. It's a vacant property and the grass is severely overgrown. Our office has forwarded these concerns again to licensing and inspections. Hopefully that can be taken care of for the residents in that neighborhood. Over the break, a few residents had inquired about getting street lights put up in different sections of their neighborhoods for various reasons. There is a process for this. I won't go through it, but there are 8 steps that needs to be taken in order for council to consider putting a street light up in your neighborhood. It has to go through the city engineer and PP&L. I will be requesting that this process be published on the city's website so residents can have easy access to it. Also a reminder, again, during the break, it came up a lot about reporting street lights when they are out. If you have access to a computer, you can go to www.nepalights.com. You will need the pole number and street address. And the pole number is 11 digits, so you can report it on there. If you don't have access to a computer, you can call Joyce Electrical at 570-521-4273 to report your street light being out. I was pleased to be present on Tuesday for a press conference held by PennDOT regarding the Rockwell Avenue Bridge project. Everything seems to be on schedule for an October 2015 completion date, and work should begin within the next few weeks. So that was good news. I would also ask that we send a request to licensing and inspections that the zoning board agenda is posted online to the city's website as soon as possible, as soon as it is available. The last agenda posted on the website is from June of this year. It's my hope that the agendas will be posted as soon as they can be, so the public can be informed about that. Council received a petition to eliminate illegal parking in front of the Geneva House on Adams Avenue. Residents of the Geneva House would like a new emergency exit only, no parking sign. The current one is in bad shape, and it seems to be that they're having an awful time with those issues. I will be contacting DPW to see if we could get that done, and I will also speak to Chief Graziano about the petition that the residents in the Geneva House sent down to council. He was copied on the letter, so I'm sure he's aware of it. And when I do get that information, I will update the public. We are approaching winter once again, as Mr. McGough mentioned earlier in the meeting, and as I expressed last winter, I think it's important that we revisit alternate side of the street parking during snow emergencies, and we get a jump on this issue. I also think it's important that the city develop a snow emergency plan that can be accessed by residents on the city's website. This will help keep everyone on the same page during a snow emergency, and we can become more efficient in alerting the public, and many other cities do this. I plan on reaching out to the DPW Director, Dennis Gallagher, the Mayor, and Chief Graziano to get their input and see if they would be on board with this. Also, Mr. Wexler, since he'll be the Public Safety Chair. And Mr. McGough, as he mentioned, spoke to the Mayor, and it seems like there's hope that we can get this done. I'd also like to see if it's possible that the city could notify neighborhood residents when the street sweeper is scheduled to be in their area. During August, I was approached by numerous citizens as I attended some neighborhood meetings who said they would be more than willing to move their cars to give the gentleman from the DPW better access to the curbs. They just need to know when the street sweeper will be in their area. And I think the DPW workers do a wonderful job, and this may make it easier on them and help the residents. So I will be speaking to DPW Director Gallagher about that to see if there's a different way we might be able to do that for next year. And finally, just a comment, as Mr. Wexler did earlier about the cell phone tower issue. I was, as Mr. Wexler was, disappointed and disheartened that that took place during the break. I believe that Mr. Rogan used extremely poor judgment, and his actions affected the perception that the public has on this council as a whole, and that's what really bothered me the most about it, to be completely honest. And I appreciate Mr. Rogan apologizing, but I would appreciate if he would apologize for not disclosing the fact that he was in negotiations with Verizon, and apologize for the fact that he brought Mr. Oser in to our caucus without telling us that there was any hint of what was going on. Because as Mr. Wexler explained, we did not find out about this until the night of the zoning board meeting. So we, as councilmen, need to remember our responsibilities as elected officials. And as the speaker said earlier today, there is this sense in the city that no one can be trusted. There's not a trust of council or the administration, and we need to get that trust back. And what happened during the break was not a good start. And Mr. Rogan said, an attorney said it was ethical what he did. In my code of ethics, in the Gahan Code of Ethics, it wasn't ethical what went on. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I spoke long enough before. On the pension, everyone in the administration, everyone on council, I think everyone in the city recognizes the severity of the problem that exists with the pension. The problem becomes how to deal with it. It's not just identifying the problem, it's identifying a way to resolve the problem. And because of the complexity of the pension issue, it needs not only long-term reform, it needs short-term reform as well. We're dealing with a number of issues as far as the pensions are concerned. And I know the administration has been working every day to try and find some resolution to this. It's not something that's being ignored. How did we get to this situation? There are any number of reasons that you can give for why the pension fund is in the state it is. You can look nationwide and see the pensions throughout the country are in trouble. As bad as Scranton's, probably not, but there are a great number of reasons why the problems exist. What we need to do is continue to work at resolving the problem rather than determining, blame. We need resolution to the problems, and I think that we're on the road to doing that. Just a brief comment on the idea of casinos in the city of Scranton. First of all, to get the state to issue a special license would probably be a Herculean task. There are restrictions against licenses in proximity to other gambling licenses. There are all types of restrictions as far as the license is concerned. And even if that were to take place, just because you have a license, it doesn't mean that you have someone that will open a casino or operate one. And that becomes the second question, big question to me is, who would actually operate a casino in the city of Scranton? That could be problematic. And lastly, even though I do frequent, I'll say Mohegan, Mount Airy, at times, I'm not a big fan of having a casino in an urban area. I think that that old idea that gambling is going to bring about salvation, if we look at Atlantic City and what's occurred there, I don't think that that's necessarily a true or a fact of any type. I think the problems with the urban casinos far outweigh the benefit that they would bring to the city. And that's all.
5B, for introduction, an ordinance amending file of the council number 11, 1976, entitled, "An Ordinance as Amended Enacting Imposing a Tax for General Revenue Purposes in the Amount of 2% on Earned Income and Net Profits on Persons, Individuals, Associations, and Businesses who are residents of the City of Scranton or non-residents of the City of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the City of Scranton, requiring the filing of returns by taxpayers subject to the tax, requiring employers to collect the tax at source, providing for the administration, collection, and enforcement of the said tax, and imposing penalties for the violations by reenacting the imposition of the wage tax at 2 4/10% on earned income for residents and 1% on earned income for non-residents of the City of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the City of Scranton for the year 2014. Emergency certificate attached.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question.
On the question. I just wanted to say that I do appreciate Attorney Shrive's letter that President McGough read at the beginning of the meeting, and I don't think that he should take all of the blame for what happened, but I do appreciate the letter that he did send to council, and I appreciate the efforts that Mr. Attorney Shrive and the law office are going to make moving forward. I think that'll help in the future. I am voting yes on this tonight because I would have voted yes for it if it was introduced in January. However, I did have concerns about the emergency situation. I think moving forward, we need to make sure that when emergency legislation is sent down, there's an actual emergency. I think Mrs. Schumacher pointed it out correctly. I don't see the emergency here, and I think that's a problem. It really probably should have gone through 3 readings. Thank you.
I would like to comment as well. First of all, the tax was part of the 2014 budget. It was approved as part of the budget. The enabling legislation did not come to us, but as has been stated by Attorney Shrive and also Attorney Minora, by law, that's not necessary. So to me, by enacting it as part of the budget, we did, in fact, enact the EIT tax for 2014. As far as doing it in 3 readings or in one evening, I think the idea of emergency certificate attached is maybe a bit of a misnomer. As we said the other day, I think the more proper term would be an expedient certificate attached. I don't think doing this in 1 reading or 1 evening or three weeks makes a difference. It is something that we would have voted for. It's something that was part of the budget. I don't think it makes a great deal of difference in the number of days in which we do vote on this.
I would comment just briefly, kind of echo what my colleagues said regarding this legislation, and also mention that this piece of legislation is actually enacted retroactively every year. It's normally the end of January, but it's still always retroactive to January 1. So in that essence, it is the same. As far as passing it in one night under emergency certificate, I'm normally not a fan of an emergency certificate. But because of pending litigation over the 205 tax and this possibly being one of the items that may be debated, I think it would be in the city's best interest to get this passed and get it on the books as quickly as possible.
All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved.
5C for introduction and ordinance creating and establishing special city account number as noted entitled Free Swim for citizens of Scranton for the receipt and disbursement of those funds received for this purpose.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved.
5D for introduction and ordinance designating the 500 block of Bogart Place as one-way designation westbound from Cedar Avenue to South Washington Avenue, approximately 430 linear feet.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, for those people that aren't familiar with where Bogart Place is, it is the court, I'll say, that runs behind the 500 block of Lackawanna Avenue, behind Coney Island, and now the Renaissance 500 or whatever the development names are. It is that court there. And with the introduction of some hopefully new businesses into the 500 block of Lackawanna and possible increased traffic in Bogart Place, it was thought that a one-way would be much more appropriate for that area rather than two-way traffic, since it is a narrow court. All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved.
5E for introduction, a resolution appointment of Santa J. Corby, also known as Sandy Corby, 401 Williamsburg Lane, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18504, as a member of the Board of the Scranton Parking Authority effective August 11, 2014. Mrs. Corby will be replacing Frank J. Tunis Jr., who was removed from the board by letter dated January 22, 2014. Mrs. Corby will fill the unexpired term of Frank J. Tunis Jr., whose term is scheduled to expire on June 1, 2017.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, I just want to say to Mrs. Corby that your brother asked me to vote no on this so that you would not be appointed, but I will not listen to him. All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved.
5F for introduction, a resolution appointment of Maureen McNichols, 551 North Hyde Park Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18504, as a member of the Board of the Scranton Parking Authority, effective August 11, 2014. Mrs. McNichols will be replacing Rosetta Walsh, who resigned effective August 5, 2014. Mrs. McNichols will fill the unexpired term of Rosetta Walsh, whose term is scheduled to expire on June 1, 2015.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5F be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved.
5G for introduction, a resolution amending Resolution Number 1, 2014, entitled Adopting the Rules and Order of Business of the Scranton City Council, Scranton, Pennsylvania, by amending Article 3 Committees, Section 2 Standing Committees of the Council, and Section 3 Standing Subcommittees of the Council.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5G be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question,
Yes, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Evans on his retirement and and his new position as well.
and the need to do this was the names of the people and their committees were placed into the rules of council, and just so that we can reflect the proper committee assignments, we felt it necessary to make this amendment to the rules of council. At this time, I'll all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved.
5H for introduction, a resolution, reappointment of Michael Salerno, 1200 Bryn Mawr Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18504, as a member of the Board of the Scranton Parking Authority for an additional 5-year term. Mr. Salerno's current term expired on June 1, 2014, and his new term will expire on June 1, 2019.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5H be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved.
5I for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Dominic Giorgetti, 3015 Pittston Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, as a member of the Board of the Scranton Sewer Authority, effective August 27, 2014. Mr. Giorgetti will be replacing Elizabeth Randall, who resigned on August 26, 2014. Mr. Giorgetti will fill the unexpired term of Elizabeth Randall, whose term is scheduled to expire on December 31, 2015.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5I be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved.
5J for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into an agreement by and between the City of Scranton, PP&L, and the University of Scranton for the placement of surveillance cameras along a portion of Vine Street in the City of Scranton, as well as any and all additional documents that may be necessary to consummate this transaction.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5J be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question,
Yes, on the question. I just want to read the locations of the cameras because I think that's important. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There'll be 6 cameras. They'll be located at Madison and Vine, Monroe and Vine, Quincy and Vine, Clay and Vine, Taylor and Vine, and Webster and Vine. And these cameras will have no cost to the city, as we discussed in caucus.
and it should also be mentioned that they will be integrated into the surveillance camera system that is in place at police headquarters. All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, and so moved.
I make a motion to suspend the rules to move item 5B to 6th and 7th order to be considered for final passage based on the attached emergency certificate.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, and so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, formerly 5B, reading by title, file of the council number 41, 2014, an ordinance amending file of the council number 11, 1976, entitled, an ordinance as amended enacting, imposing a tax for general revenue purposes in the amount of 2% on earned income and net profits on persons, individuals, associations, and businesses who are residents of the city of Scranton or non-residents of the city of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the city of Scranton, requiring the filing of returns by taxpayers subject to the tax, requiring employers to collect the tax at source, providing for the administration, collection, and enforcement of the said tax, and imposing penalties for the violations by reenacting the imposition of the wage tax at 2 4/10% on earned income for residents and 1% on earned income for non-residents of the city of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the city of Scranton for the year 2014, emergency certificate attached.
Prior to, if anyone would like to speak to what is now 6A and potentially 7A, have the opportunity to do so now.
You should have finished that, right? And then, does it matter? Okay, just so he picks up where it is.
Yes, Marie Schumacher, I would like to reiterate, if this is not necessary, I don't know why you're doing this at all. There is no emergency. If there had been an emergency, you presumably would have come back during the month of August and taken care of it then. And again, if it's not required, why bother? Thank you.
Yeah, Bill Jackets. I don't have a problem with you guys pushing this on up and getting it done in one night. My problem is the same problem I had with the audit. We do this on a regular basis. Why don't we have standard operating procedures in the city of Scranton? City of Scranton's been in existence for, I don't know, 200 years? I have no idea. I remember growing a beard for the 100-year centennial when I was in high school. So I don't know how many years it's been. When are we going to wake up? I mean, seriously. Now, we open up a door for the commuters to take us into court, and now we have to defend this, which is going to cost the city more money, because we're going to have to defend this because a mistake was made. I appreciate Attorney Schreiber stepping up to the plate and admitting that he made a mistake. I think that's awfully manly of himself to do that. But it doesn't rest with him. Mayor Courtwright was a city councilman for 6 years. Mr. Rogan and Mr. McGough have been on council for several years. We've been through this before. Again, if we had a standard operating procedure, an SOP, and a checklist that would outline to all the people in these jobs what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, we could probably alleviate a lot of problems that this city has. Okay? That's my point. We make more problems for ourselves than we solve. It's time for the city of Scranton to wake up. So I hope someone passes this on to the administration and to Mayor Courtwright, that maybe we need to sit down and get the administrative people working on drawing up SOPs, standard operating procedures, like they do just about every major company in the United States. And probably every city, except Scranton.
You've heard reading by title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question.
Yes, Mr. McGough, just one comment. The reason why I understand that this could not be voted on prior to this evening was that any tax legislation requires a longer advertising period. Is that correct?
Correct.
Solicitor?
Correct.
Yes. So that is why we couldn't act on it prior to this evening, because it had to be advertised, I believe, for 30 days. So this is the earliest possible chance that we could vote on it. Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, and so moved.
Seventh order, 7A for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 70, 2014, appointment of Patrick DeSarno, 606 Hampton Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18504, to the permanent position of Superintendent of Fire for the Scranton Fire Department, effective July 26, 2014.
As Chair for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. McGough?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, formerly 6A, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for Adoption, file of the Council Number 41, 2014, amending file of the Council Number 11, 1976, entitled An Ordinance as Amended, enacting, imposing a tax for general revenue purposes in the amount of 2% on earned income and net profits on persons, individuals, associations, and businesses who are residents of the City of Scranton or non-residents of the City of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the City of Scranton, requiring the filing of returns by taxpayers subject to the tax, requiring employers to collect the tax at source, providing for the administration, collection, and enforcement of the said tax, and imposing penalties for the violations by reenacting the imposition of the wage tax at 2 4/10% on earned income for residents and 1% on earned income for non-residents of the City of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the City of Scranton for the year 2014. Emergency certificate attached.
What is the recommendation of the Chair for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Yes.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. McGough?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted. If there is no further business, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
The meeting is adjourned.